Thursday, November 21st, 2019, and the time is 7:02 p.m. May we all rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary Ann, may you call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Coyne? Here. Commissioner Grau?
Here.
Commissioner LaDuke?
Here.
Commissioner Leach? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Here. Do any commissioners have anything they'd like to amend, add, or delete to our current agenda? Seeing none, we now move to public comment on non-agenda items. No public comment from you, Ann? All right, we'll move on. We'll move on to the approval of minutes. I'm going to split these into two motions. I was absent for one of the meetings. So I move to approve the regular board meeting minutes of Thursday, October 17th, 2019. May I have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on, I move to approve the special board meeting of Tuesday, November 12th, 2019. May I have a second?
Second.
Approve the minutes. I don't think I added that. So may we have a second on approving the minutes?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we move on to report of park officials. I just wanted to thank the commissioners and the staff for the 2 meetings last week. I think they were they handled some heavy materials and heavy issues, and I just wanted to thank the board and the staff for coming and working together through that. I'll now turn it over to our attorney, it's not here, to our executive director, Mountcastle.
Thank you. I have some couple general items. If there's no questions for me, I'll run through those. I first wanted to, this falls under the market and public relations. I know Margaret had mentioned about the trivia event, but I just wanted to thank her and Julie Grieve had a lot to do with that event, and Jen Clausen in terms of coming up with all these questions. Spent a lot of time with that. We made $4,600 for the foundation, and so I just wanted to personally, recognize her publicly for all of the hard work with that, and all the rest of the staff that helped, and the foundation board and clinical trial.
I was the beggar.
A couple other things under HR. We're heavy into the staff is with performance evaluations. We're over 600 part-time and seasonal staff, and they've a team with Diane and several of the managers worked on getting this on as an electronic paperless project, which is it was a very big undertaking. There were some issues with Paycom, and she has gotten a very nice refund from them. We just heard today because there was a glitch that they had told us something was going to work and connect, and it did not. So the staff had to redo. They had to redo some of the things they did, but that's going to be a much more efficient way to get this. Especially a lot of the staff that are off at college, to get them their reviews, and just all the different schedules of everybody to get that taken care of for those staff, and then the full-time ones will be the same as well. Last week, Superintendent DeAngelis and Director DeGangi and I attended the legal symposium, and that is probably the best training, I would say, for me personally all year. It's talks about all the new legislation and then all of the new policies, et cetera, that we need to implement, and how that all affects park districts, and there's several. So I will be bringing those. I've divided those amongst the staff for people that affects, and I can summarize those at a different time for the board if you'd like, but there is one that does apply to the board, that we have to have a new policy on sexual harassment, which we do not have in our old commissioner manual, which is kind of in transition right now, that commissioner manual. So we'll add that to it, and I plan on giving that to Ansel Plank, to DIRT, to take and run with that policy manual. So
I thought we did one.
we did a draft,
For staff.
not a commissioner one. No, that's the next biggie, and that was in draft stage, and it got stalled. Safety Committee put on, which is another excellent training. And, they run through all of these items that are mandatory trainings for the staff. So that also happened last week. The affiliate guidelines, we are sending the copy out that that we are proposing to bring to the board. I've heard back from many of the affiliates, but then there's a group of them we haven't met with since May. So we're going to send it to all of them and then hopefully bring it to the board at the last meeting in December is our goal. We are starting to meet, the staff is starting to meet weekly on the Oakton master plan next phase, the public phase of this. And so we've got a lot of tasks that we're working on. So we set weekly meetings and we're running through those. We're starting to get responses. I think we have 15 or so responses so far, and they're due December 11th for the members that will be on the task force. And we're looking for 30 to 35 with the commissioners. We're working through some Q&As on the project and a presentation that will be at the first meeting on January 15th, and a few other, we're perfecting the pro formas a little bit more as well.
Question.
Yes.
How many did you send out? And when did you send them?
We sent 56. And
Probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
it was on
We gave them till
Friday.
December 11th.
Around the 12th, I remember.
It was
on the
1 week.
7th,
actually.
okay.
We mailed them on the 7th.
You only have 15. That's disappointing.
Not when you gave them a deadline of
December 11th. So we're going to send a reminder
Yeah.
next week.
Okay.
Yeah. We have several to bump. So we had over,
Yeah.
I don't know, 100 and some.
Oh, when we started, yeah, it was about 150.
Yeah,
So.
names. So we'll definitely have a good group. There's a lot of very good people. So that is happening. I wanted to mention, I don't know if you had, I know a couple people noticed when you're outside, this is something that is a requirement of Illinois Historic Preservation Agency, but I'm also very excited about the gate, the historic gate and archway that are going up. We had it restored, and they are now putting that up, and it'll be completed, I think they said next week. This is, I thought people would enjoy this. It's an original picture, not original, but from the 40s, pass that around, of what it looked like. So, and it was in pretty bad shape. And so we were able to, this company we've been working with, we worked with them on that statue that's at the Historical Society. And so we've worked with this company on this as well. And so we're going, and then this is also the money that we received, some of the money we received from Senator Murphy was to pay for this, and it was about $20,000. So we put in all the paperwork for that. But once it gets up, we'll either do a photo op, either, one of our upcoming meetings if it's not too cold out, or we'll wait until the spring. But it'll be a showcase piece, on the property. So I think that's
Very cool.
Very cool.
and then the very last thing is and Mary Ann's going to meet with us for part of the time. I'm meeting with Dirk Price before our next meeting, just to run through, a lot of our outstanding projects and, issues that are, that are on the top of the horizon right now or on the horizon. So if there's anything that you want to add in there that you want me to talk to him about, and then he'll be coming to that meeting on first meeting in December.
Is everything done with that little piece of property at Pinkwood?
No, Tom emailed them this week, and we don't have the deed in hand. It's, I would say I want to call it like 80%.
It's moving.
Yeah, it's moving along, but
I just thought I missed it.
No.
I thought maybe we were done.
we're moving through the different phases, and there's like time frames within there. Yeah, but these attorneys are on it that we hired to do that. So it was one of the things on my list though to work through before
I
the
know,
end of the year. Any other questions?
I think this might already be on your list, but I know we wanted to have another set of eyes on the North Park
Yes, that's
covenant
on-
as well.
that's on the list.
Question, when you go back to it, on the affiliate agreement, did you say May? What was the date you said? I thought you said the affiliate agreement you're working on and you were hoping to get it.
December.
Oh, December. No wonder. I thought May was a long time away, so
No,
that
yeah,
makes more sense.
We had back and forth, and then we had a meeting we were giving.
Yep.
And, thought we were in a really good place. There's one sticking point
Yep.
that football sent back, and we just sent a response back on the 11th.
Okay.
It had to do with the insurance and
The indemnification, right?
indemnification, and that's something that, I don't think we don't, my recommendation, we do not change that. And that's a recommendation.
How's it written today?
I can send it to you.
Well, I mean, what's the clause? Is there an equal clause? I know we have an attorney on the board here that might be involved in this herself.
Yes.
I just didn't know if there's a comparable provision to what we have in hand today versus what is being asked. Like normally when you do contracts, you'll like just switch out different modified new language to replace the old language.
Right.
So I'm just saying it was,
You're asking is it
In
different?
the old agreement.
what was the indemnification language in the old
I
agreement?
believe it's the same.
Oh,
I do too.
so it hasn't changed?
No.
Oh, that's weird.
I will double check to make sure that, no, I don't think it's.
And in fact, some affiliates wanted a higher level of indemnification, thought the threshold was too low
Oh,
that we had been operating under.
Right.
So it was an interesting mixed bag, but
But I feel like we
Right.
have, really, I think the input level we've gotten is very high. We've given a lot of time for input. Now, there are 7 other affiliates that we haven't talked to since the spring when we met with them. And a couple of them weren't happy with price, with the price increase, with the per participant increase, or, they were struggling with that a little bit. But, this is our recommendation to the board, and I'll let them know when we're going to be talking about it. They can come and voice their concerns at this point. But I feel at this point we have a very good document that we're, comfortable recommending.
great. Speaking of documents then, so the other piece, might have got this wrong too. Did you mention commissioner policy in your update?
Yes.
Commissioner policy. Refresh me where we left off, because I never remember as well as my other fellow commissioners do.
Sure.
Where did we leave off on commissioner policies? Because I don't really remember. I don't even remember reading the commissioner policy, so I'm just kind of curious as to.
So our commissioner policy, under construction, but it was the same thing. It hadn't been, it's early 90s.
Oh,
And when the new, there's been a couple times we've added policies to it when a commissioner has asked for a policy and the board's voted on it, right? So it's been looked at, but there is, it's never had a major,
Update or overview.
update or an
Okay.
overview. So since that time, so that's something that I don't think I put in my goals, but that's something I talked about. That was our next, and other than the finance policies, those are the outstanding ones since we've going through this process of updating all these policies.
Okay.
Manuals. So
At the point right now where it can go to the attorney to some degree until we get the attorney on board.
right, so
I see.
we were at a phase where her attorney was helping us, but it got paused
Yep.
because of, of our transition. And we were, Mary Ann worked and I worked on it a lot, so we feel, and we pulled from a lot of other districts and, adding
Yep.
things in. But again, there's one policy that's gotta be in by February of 2020. So if we don't get the policy passed by the board by then, which I think would be tough to probably do, we can try, but, I think that I'll be bringing you that, if there's some timely policy, I'll be bringing it to the board.
Has our VP of policy looked at it yet? And seen
I
it?
didn't even know.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, we'll send it to you. Yeah, that's one of the things we're gonna hand
Holiday
over.
reading.
So if I can still continue a little bit. So the policy by February, that is the sexual harassment policy, what is the basis of the February deadline?
State law.
State law,
So a statutory law for all boards
yes.
was passed in 19.
It
It was one of the few things they did.
Many.
Oh,
was-
I don't know about that.
yes.
You can quote me on that,
There's
Ann.
of course some
Ambiguity.
Yes, on how it's going to be implemented, is what the attorneys talked about at this seminar, right?
Yep.
I can read you, it says local governments must adopt an ordinance or resolution amending their existing sexual harassment policies to incorporate a mechanism for reporting an independent review of allegations of sexual harassment made against an elected official of the governmental unit by another elected official of a governmental unit.
Okay.
And the attorney that was giving the discussion on this was Chris Jolly, our labor attorney, and he went into then everybody's asking the same questions I'm sure you probably have, right? How is this going to be monitored? And so IAPD and suggested way of handling it that you would put in your policy. So, you know, like who does it get reported to, right? If there's a complaint, it would go to the president, you know, in their suggested policy. But then if it's against the president, you know, it can go to another commissioner. And then how does it get rectified, right?
Yep.
So they're making suggestions on
Okay.
all this. It's new. These things come out and they don't always go through like the practical side of it, how it gets implemented, correct?
It was done for all employers statewide as well. So this is kind of a multifaceted new law.
So just basically, no one's exempt from
Well, I don't know about no one, but nobody, I mean.
the
staff
legislature
already
probably
has-
is,
already
but
has.
that's
no,
it.
they are not.
They're not either. Huh? All right. Sorry, Harmony.
No, they are not.
So that's all I have. I mean,
No, those were the two things. Thank you.
be happy to answer.
Any other questions for Executive Director Mountcastle? Seeing none, we'll move on to our report section, and I turn it over to Commissioner Leduc for finance.
And I turn it over to Superintendent DeAngelis.
Thank you, Commissioner Leduc. My written report begins on page 13. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So this is just an observation. At the beginning of the year, we were below our benchmark for the portfolio, and now we're above. So did it just all even out?
I'm sorry, which page
The
are you looking at?
investment portfolio yield.
Oh,
That little curve.
yeah, so if you look at page 19, you can see that our portfolio is the green line on the chart in the middle of the page on page 19. And our performance, because of the way we do our investments, is pretty stable. As interest rates drop and we reinvest, it will decline. But the benchmark is a shorter
Shorter term.
yeah, the if you look on the page 18, the weighted average maturity for the benchmark it's actually longer than ours, but it's more affected by the current market. So
Yeah, but I guess I could probably find it in the report somewhere. It probably evened out because at the beginning of the year, you kept reporting that we were below.
we were slightly, you can see the very beginning of the year, the green line is slightly below the blue line.
Right.
So the green lines kind of remained very stable, whereas the blue line has declined as the Fed has reduced the interest rates.
But they evened out the amount. That's all right.
I'm sorry, I'm not
It's an
understand.
observation. I guess we probably did better. We did better than the blue line overall, even though at the beginning of the year we were below.
Yes, I think that's a fair observation. Any other questions? So the monthly report by funds begins on page 20. And I've highlighted in my written report all of the financial reports. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of the fund reports or the projections.
Maybe if you could just give us a few like highlights, the things that were particularly noteworthy.
Sure. If we look at, I always like to point you to the operating fund on page 24. The net surplus, we are ahead of budget to date, which is typical as our expenses tend to lag our revenues. But we're also ahead of where we were last year. But there are some variances in the calendar. I think there were 3 payrolls in October of 2018, and we had 2 in October this year. So it's a little tricky when we look at, to say exactly how much better at this point. But when we look at the deferred revenue analysis, we can see that our revenues are still better than the prior year. So I feel like we are in good shape to meet the projections that we published in the budget, which showed our net operating that we're hoping it'll be about $100,000 better than what was budgeted. So that still looks good.
Sounds great. Any areas of concern?
Not at this point. I think we look on track to be doing well.
Any other commissioner questions or comments?
Hopefully there'll be some capital bills coming through pretty soon. Although with all the projects that I saw that are postponed, maybe not.
Hoping to finish them.
Thank you.
So I guess we move on then to the approval of expenditures. I move to approve for payment vouchers in the total amount of $450,000, $450,041.05.
Second.
Any comments or discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Coin? Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes. Now move to the recreation report and Commissioner O'Donnell.
I yield the floor to Superintendent Armour.
Thank you. My report begins on page 27, with a few highlights of our Halloween events. And I know there was a question last board meeting about the youth basketball participation that our current registration is shown on page 28. So as you can see, we're still growing in that area. We also still had some outdoor rentals in October. We still see growth and participation at the activity center, including Brickton. So those numbers are continuing to grow, which is nice. Speaking of the activity center, and for those of you that know Rachel, tomorrow is her last day. If you'd like to stop by and wish her well. I also wanted to point out, it's on page 33, just we've started highlighting some of the membership updates a little bit differently. I think we started that last month, but we had 89 new members in October, so that was very promising. Some highlights. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Harrington.
Thank you. I had a question about the Oakton driving range stats for the year. Are those complete for 2019?
In the next report, you'll actually see the season highlights.
And do we think it will increase?
This is just for the month of October.
Okay. There's just such a disparity between 2013 and 2019 of the use of that facility.
Some of it is the revenues and that we saw in 2013 was that private instructor.
Okay.
So that we definitely saw a
Large
decline.
loss, yeah.
In October, it really is weather dependent too.
Thanks.
Other items, other commissioners? Questions?
I just wonder if you could ever max out Wildwood, because every month, higher, higher. Like what, at what point do the doors fall off that place? Or,
Busting at the seams. They do a lot of expansion in the new program rooms as well. They're really utilizing the space for preschool as
That's
well
great.
as the Park and Ridge room too. They've kind of taken over one of the two rooms. So that has certainly helped the situation, even though they're still very packed in the facility.
Other comments or questions? I have one. I'd like to go on the record as a member of the Activity Center. I've already said this to Rachel, but I'd like to go on the record of, to me, the Activity Center is really a cool place. And every time I go in there, I sense there's kind of a spirit. There's an active vibe that goes on there. And I think Rachel was a part of that. I think she embodied that spirit. I've already told her that, but I wanted to go on the record to say that. And I'm really thankful and grateful that we had her. Those are going to be big shoes to fill.
Yeah, we are too. And we're certainly happy for people who move on. And we do a lot of that in the entry level positions and see people come and go, which is, we're happy for them, but, sad to see them go as well. She did a wonderful job.
Yep. Okay, anything else? Okay, so this motion is mine, is that right? Okay. So I move to approve interpretive graphics / enviro signs to work with staff to design, create, and ship the interactive signage in the amount of $30,000. Any discussion? Commissioner Grau.
I'm very excited about the signage. I just, when I saw the one with the special effects, what sounds or something.
Yeah, it's going to be Sounds of Illinois. They haven't designed and come up with everything yet, but I thought the
tigers.
So is
thought
the,
the photos, staff thought the photos
is
would be
the
helpful to
lifespan
see.
of that going to be as long as the lifespan of the signs? I just think of all the times you go to those signs at different places and they're broken, and I'm like, is this really going to work?
Yeah, they're supposed to have a 10-year warranty and withstand the cold temperatures. So
That's the sign, right? But what
signs.
about,
Oh,
are
the
they going to withstand
exhibits.
We are mounting them to the building to help prevent some of that. And
Okay.
hydroxyl wiring into the building also to help with some of those issues too. So the sign companies, these exhibit companies we've been talking about are very cognizant of them being outdoors and try to do their best to make them work.
Yeah, I just it's even when they're inside, oftentimes they're broken. So I hope they. Yeah. Yeah, I just think they take a beating. Any of those interactive signs take a beating, and not for misuse or whatever. They're just,
There are certain signs too that they steered us to because they do withstand more. Like the one that was the magnifying glass, it's not a true magnifying glass, it's an illusion of it, and it's just a simple deal because we had bigger ideas and
not gonna work.
yeah. Well, they've done them before, but they've seen over time they don't work. So.
Yeah. Hoping for the best.
Other questions? Commissioner Leach.
Was this competitively bid out? I know you researched them and you looked at it, but give us some background on that.
No, it was not. It's after speaking with Tom, it's exempt from the competitive bid because it's the individual plays such an important part of the performance of the work. It was actually very difficult to find a company.
Speak to, I think it was 5 different companies. There were several of them that wouldn't even consider the project at the amount we budgeted.
So what was the Tom part? Excuse me, what was the Tom?
It's exempt because of the skill involved. It's a specialized skill.
The creation of the sign?
Yes.
Not the
The
manufacturing of the
exhibit.
sign, it's the design
Is that an exclusion?
Yeah, I don't know what it falls under exactly. Did he tell you?
He didn't say exactly. The, if the individual skill, plays an important part in the performance of the work.
The only thing I would recommend is maybe just for my own benefit is when you do that, like you already talked to 5 companies, right? You looked at them, just even like Terry a lot of times will put the other names of the companies and things, and even if you said it's exempt from the competitive bidding process, here's some other vendors we looked at and maybe the price ranges. It would just give us insight as to the process that you took to kind of narrow it down to this one.
Sure.
Anything else? Okay, hearing no further comments, please call the vote.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes?
Commissioner Tuttle, Commissioner Coyne, Commissioner Harrington.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, moving on. I move to approve Adware and Specialty of Texas, Inc. as the lowest responsible bidder for the 2020 T-shirt and apparel bid in the amount of $29,826.90.
Second.
Discussion? Commissioner Tuttle? No? Anybody? Commissioner Grau?
Well, he did raise his hand. Oh,
You're fine.
Leach. Okay. So the lowest bidder, I see why they were knocked out of the bidding. But then I wondered, well, how much did we budget for this? Like, what was it still a good? Was it still a good buy? I don't remember what we budgeted
Yeah.
for that.
In the so for example, last year, it was a little bit less. It was about 21,000, but we had a lot less pieces. So we do put the amount in the budget for each specific camper, staff, etc. So we only had about 3,600 items last year. So yes, it's still a very good price.
So how did the unit price compare?
Oh, it was, I mean, we do each individual T-shirt and
okay.
then
Yeah,
each
okay.
sweatshirt, each.
Commissioner Leach, did you?
Yeah, so yes, I still do. The question I had was coming back to, I think where Commissioner Grau was, BSN Sports. Let's talk about this a little bit more. It looks like, I always confuse it, the denominator and numerator, it would be 46,490, 49, right? 4,649 is the amount of articles you're buying from this vendor.
Correct.
Okay. In this, you say up above, non-responsible on 33.
Mhm.
So is that 33 off of 4649?
33
Products.
individual items.
Categories?
Right.
Categories. Categories. Okay. So meaning this could have been hundreds of items, thousands of items, things like that?
Correct.
Okay. So the 17,633, because it's almost half, right? 60% or so of it. That amount is, what I'm trying to say is, when you go back and if you would have added in the 33, how far are we really off of these? Is this, out of 4,000, it's easy for me to calculate 29,826 into 4,649. I can divide that pretty easy and get to $6.42 each.
Right. Some of them could have been sweatshirts, jackets. There's some right.
But what I'm trying to say is I can't necessarily compute this, and maybe that's why you guys made the decision you did, because you can't either. But I would like to kind of, is the 33, given it's a category apparently, does that represent how many of the 4,649?
I don't know that off the top of my head. We'd have to go back and look at all
The only reason I'm saying is
Did they bid on the full amount, or did they not bid?
No, the BSN Sports only picked certain amount of items that they wanted to bid for. All the other products, 33 line items, they put no bid on.
so they don't want them.
They couldn't do it. They didn't have it in stock. They didn't have the product. So it's non-responsive because we want the whole bid
I
of the
get it.
year.
So you're just trying to source the whole order, and they're just giving you what they had in stock or whatever approach they applied to
Whatever
it.
they have available or their vendors.
want to do some of the specific items we requested. So we wouldn't have had a certain amount of items if we
Yeah, and that goes back to the category versus the items. It's hard for me to back into what that would be because my experience historically with BSN is they're one of the largest vendors and very price effective. So I'm not discounting anything that happened. I'm just saying whatever that process was,
They had no bid. They listed no bid on
Right.
33 items
33.
of the items that we asked for, categories like
We don't know
t-shirts.
the volume in the categories.
It's in the bid. I don't have it in front of me, but volume, you're talking about like per,
Like what we requested of each item.
Yeah, so like, so think of it a different way, right?
there's
You-
there's times where it says it was 10 shirts, 10
Correct.
sweatshirts.
So, like, for instance, let's just say you had some unique sweatshirts, a certain type of dry fit or something like that. You could easily have out of 33 items, that could make up 100 or 200 things out of 4,649, which you could easily source through a different vendor at a much lower dollar amount for those 33. That's all I'm saying. Just like you go to the grocery store for two different things, you go to two different grocery stores. That's all I'm saying.
We didn't
But I have no
go
idea.
there because we thought it was non-responsive. Because it was, we didn't.
Yeah, and it's much easier for staff to go through one vendor than to go through multiple vendors and search for specific items and then work with different companies. We give them all our logos, they have all of our information, and we have definitely found that to be an easier process.
No, I don't doubt the easier process. The difference is the actual value that is either being gained, saved, or was indifferent. That's all I was trying to figure out. Without that math, you wouldn't be able to find out. That's all.
Okay, anybody else? I had a question on this as well.
Sure.
Who did this work for us last year?
Last year was Sharp Sports.
Okay, and did they not bid or what?
They did not,
They did not.
no.
How come, do you know?
We had some challenges with them last year, and I don't know that they could necessarily handle our volume. They were a smaller company.
My other question was, the bids between Adware and Color Your Own are really close. And Color Your Own is here in Niles versus Adware in Houston, Texas. So was there any consideration given to that perhaps that would be you talk about staff time and administrative issues and quality and just making sure all that stuff comes out right. Is there any consideration given to that maybe you would want to go with a local provider?
Well, we do need to go with the lowest responsible bidder, and we have worked with companies from out of state before very successfully and worked with some in-state that haven't been very successful. So we go with the process and try and get the lowest price and work with the vendor we have. For several years, we had the same vendor each year, and that was certainly the easiest process by far. But, that vendor is no longer bidding.
Anybody else? Okay, please call the question.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
No.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes?
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne, Commissioner Grau,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
I turn the floor over to Commissioner Leach to discuss building and grounds report.
Thank you. I'm going to turn over the report to Superintendent Wolf. Go ahead.
My report begins on page 41, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Superintendent Wolf?
I just have a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just want to say I was excited to see that ground had broken and that you'd started laying down the bricks for the pattern at the main park, new pollinator garden. So I look forward to seeing how that develops.
We're excited too. Thank you.
I have a question. Centennial Park. I see the pictures in Centennial Park. I think there's still a mound of dirt out there, right? Is it because of weather, or what's happened there?
Yeah, the project's currently delayed due to weather. So we got started with the project. It got a lot of rain, snow, freeze. So we're still waiting for weather to become a little more favorable.
So when do you think, not that you can predict the weather, but is this a still winter? I think we're technically in a winter. Is this a winter project at this point, or do you think it will roll now into spring?
You know, I talked to Christy about this yesterday, and we're hopeful with discussion with the contractor
Yep.
that we might get some. They're looking at the weather next week. They think there might be a couple of days next week that might work out. So, we're really at the mercy of the weather at this point. But we will make sure that it's ready for baseball as soon as it possibly can be. So,
No. We got plenty of time, I think, for baseball and softball.
well,
The question I have then on that as well is, when you mention contractor, is it easier for the three phrase question here? You got a contractor potential to help you here, or you contracted it out, so you already did. But when you think of either volunteers helping you out, or you think of staff, talk to that combination, if you could, between the division of labor that you have potentially for you on these type of projects.
yeah. In the past, a lot of times volunteer labor becomes very challenging because when the labor is volunteered, it's not being paid at the prevailing wage. And so in the past, that has been an area of concern on some of those projects that we work on. In addition to that, just from a staffing perspective, we don't have often staff available for these large scale projects, nor do we have some of the expertise to be able to do some of these things. So
Okay.
it's ebbed and flowed over time, depending on the staff we had available or in our, in the district and working for us. And we just don't feel right now that we have a good group of staff that can work that through. And I'm not. It's working with groups of volunteers on projects like this still requires a lot of staff, and sometimes isn't any easier than it is just to do it yourself or contract it out. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
So this is a curiosity thing more than anything. I'm looking over the tree plantings,
Mhm.
and I'm going through this list, and there aren't any two sites that are getting the same kind of tree. So I was just wondering how you select. How do you make the selection as to what tree you're going to put where?
I could not answer that. I would have to defer to Christy and Glenn. They're both, Christy is a certified arborist. Glenn has taken a lot of the trainings, but is not certified yet as an arborist. But we go through a lot, and the goal is to try to make sure that we have a good tree biodiversity, so that we don't have too many of one species. Everyone's familiar with Dutch elm many years ago in the 80s, 70s, and then recently we had all the emerald ash borers, and we lost a lot of ash trees. And so that's something that we're always very conscious of, just making sure that we have a good diversity. They look at the site, think about what trees would do well, how would they be successful based on the conditions. Is it low? Is it high in the park? Does it tend to get flooded out and things like that? So I would be happy to get a little more information and report back on that, but I just don't know how they come about that.
Would it make more sense if I just gave her a call?
You could do that.
Just curious,
Yeah,
but I'd
no,
like to know.
absolutely.
Maybe you can tell me this. Do you have like a, we talked about a lawn care policy. Do you have a master plan that says we use these kinds of trees now because they're X resistant or they're?
I know in the past we had followed the tree. The city has some guidance on that, and the Morton Arboretum puts out things like that. Christy, being a certified arborist, she's on top of that and keeps up with it. So I trust her to be the expert that she is.
I trust it's okay if I give her a call.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Commissioner Harrington.
Thank you. I was impressed by the picture of South Park and the completed project there. Yes. Looking forward to seeing it in person. It looks like we can get a lot more use out of that space. So was hoping we could maybe do some social media or some other type of marketing of this new kind of renovated space for groups in town.
Thank you. Commissioner Tunnel.
Just two comments. It looks like you guys did some work at Centennial of the playground. I appreciate the pictures. Prospect.
It was Prospect, yes.
So
Yes.
it looks like a lot safer for the kids. So thank you for work on that. Looks like you saved the district some money by going back to the manufacturer.
I was very happy with the manufacturer's response. This was a piece of equipment that we installed a few years back. We had a couple of comments of children that had fallen and gotten some minor injuries. And so we took that to the manufacturer. I asked if it had been recalled and they had indicated that it was not, but they offered some replacement parts that would have cost us quite a bit of money otherwise. So I was very happy, and they said they just did it because they wanted to keep the customers happy. So coincidentally, they no longer manufacture that piece, but but thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the proactive approach there. I guess I was just looking for an update for your trip down to Springfield as well, just how that went.
Sure.
Did you get a good sense out of that meeting?
We did. It's obviously you don't get a lot of feedback if most of you probably haven't been involved in that process, but you're there. They have a timer set. You get 3 minutes. You have just the foam board that you bring with yourself down there, and you have 3 minutes to kind of go through and have that discussion. So oftentimes they will look around, ask if there's any questions. No one will have any questions. No one will have any comments. You walk out the door with absolutely zero feedback. In fact, we saw several of those while we were waiting, but at the conclusion of Manager Meunier's presentation, they said this looks like a really nice project. So I was encouraged by the fact that they offered something to us that they don't offer to anybody else, but who knows what that means. So yeah, so yep. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you for your work on that.
Yep, you're welcome.
Other comments or questions for Superintendent Wolf? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Grau.
Commissioner Leach and I had our first meeting about the lawn care task force, and it was successful. So we'll be meeting with Terry and Christy hopefully soon, or I'll be meeting with them to see how we can move that forward. So on the agenda is a motion to designate the delegate and first alternate to the annual business meeting. So I move to approve and designate. Because usually you do it, right? Sorry about that. Is anyone planning? I highly recommend it, but no.
I'll be out of town.
But maybe not Saturday. Sorry about that. I forgot about that. All right, not commissioner. And who's the backup usually? You don't need one? First alternate?
But me, that's fine.
I think it's usually-
Superintendent Armour.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll try again. I kind of knew that. I move to approve and designate Executive Director Mountcastle as delegate and Superintendent Armour as first alternate to the annual business meeting of the Illinois Association of Park Districts on Saturday, January 25th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the vote.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne? Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc? Aye. Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
Okay, and then next is the Manassas Agreement. I move to approve the Maine Niles Association of Special Recreation Articles of Agreement as it presented, and for the President and Secretary to execute and deliver the agreement.
Second.
All right, do you want to explain
I'll
this?
just real quickly explain. On
Yes.
page 47 in the packet, there's a memo. And following that, on the pages following are the updated agreement. This is more of a housekeeping issue. The new executive director started, and they're going through, she was going through her files, and they're going through an accreditation process, and realized that she did not have a signed copy of the agreement from all the districts. And so she is asking for us to sign it, and she made one change that was noted from the past one in her files. It basically has to do with an administrative district. In the past, there used to be one of the 7 districts would be the administrative district and handle payroll and benefits. Now they have their own staff that handles that. Other than that, she cleaned up the language from, association to, it said Maine Niles in certain places in the association. So as it was looked over by the attorneys, they also have Ansel Blank as their attorney. So.
Any questions? Comments? Nope. Call the question.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Aye.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
Okay, I'm done. Commissioner Coyne.
Not a lot to report. One thing that is very encouraging is that Mayor Maloney, I think, started the process of trying to get the representative, a liaison from each governing body in town together for a periodic meetings to discuss working together on projects. We haven't been able to coordinate the meetings, but I like the format because, or I like the idea because it'll include the president or president of those particular boards and one other board member from each entity. And I think that one of the very first things we'll be talking about is the Bussey Highway project, along with, in conjunction with upcoming things with Hinckley. And then also, I want to talk to somebody about getting access to the tennis courts at Maine East, because I keep getting contacted because I guess I was too pro pickleball. So the people, that, and that's fine. Residents are contacting me and saying, we can't play tennis there. I go, it's November. But it would be nice in the spring to make sure that we have a policy. And what I'm hoping to do is try to get District 207 to actually put it in some sort of policy, or at least a practice, that they're going to have work with the Park District to have, hey, these are the times that we can have tennis courts and all that. And obviously, the various staff at both places will have to figure that out. But that's my report.
Add a couple things under intergovernmental as well, that sustainability meeting that we had, and you'll probably
yes.
be talking to all of them about that. And then I'm in communication with Superintendent from 64 for an official meeting over some items that we have, and I'll communicate with you on that as well.
Yeah. I realize there is, District 64 has a opinion on certain lawn additives, and that I may have to talk to people, be involved in that process at some point. Because that's all I want to say about that right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Coyne.
Question.
Mhm.
What exactly did Mayor Maloney have to say about this, the intergovernmental activity with regard to the Bussey project? I was at the council meeting on Monday night where that was discussed, and it didn't come up. So I'm just curious as to what he said.
He didn't say anything specifically about that to me, other than casual conversation, because he's a friend of mine, about that project. That at the meeting on Monday, they discussed. They were given a presentation,
Correct?
and questions were able to be asked, but there was no bidding It wasn't
Correct.
anything about a bid or anything like that.
Correct.
So I think we're in the very early stages of that, but I just want to make sure that that when we have, I'm going to say when we have these meetings, that is a topic of discussion, because I think it just makes that makes a lot of sense for us to be able to work together on that project. We can really enhance Hinckley, and actually make it much safer for the people that are coming there to play baseball or football, or using the pool or whatever other things are in Hinckley, from crossing that street to making walking path / bike path that goes around goes around the park, all of those things. And a ton of it seems to me to be swing on how wide is Bussey going to be at that point, and where are they going to be parking cars. And so that's where we're kind of working. And I wanted to make sure that they don't forget that we're on that street, and we want to have a little bit of say in how that gets laid out.
Yeah, for the edification of the board, the how would I say this? There was a point made about, in summary, the road diet is for Bussey that it would be reduced from 4 through lanes to 2 through lanes with a center turn lane, and then bike lanes on each side, and parking would not be impacted. That's in essence what the proposal is. The point was brought up between Elm and that street that comes out by the pool. Is that Morris or whatever it is? There is no place to turn. And so the question was asked, you know, as opposed to, could we better utilize that space and perhaps put a crossing in and perhaps have an island in the middle so that you cut the distance in half? That was the discussion now. Just, I guess it's for the board's edification. That's the way the discussion went. So that's what was said.
I emailed Gail after the meeting and with 2 points that because we're doing master planning at Hinckley, we should be involved in their discussions and vice versa, because their date may be 2021 or 2027. It's, who knows? But we should have an idea of how we're going to coexist there. And if we could get a sidewalk there, it would be fabulous.
That was
There's
brought
no
up as well.
sidewalk. Right, and no crosswalk. And then the other thing, and maybe you know the answer to this, Commissioner O'Donnell, that they kept talking about connecting to the Des Plaines River Bike Trail. And I was trying to figure out if we know that's going to happen, if that is a second way other than the Oakton Forest Preserve property, and whether we should stop talking to the Forest Preserve about connecting with the bike trail if it's going to happen on Bussey.
Yeah, I don't know. I when they talked about that, I didn't understand it.
Okay.
Part of the problem is I'm not familiar with where the connection off of Bussey is. I think it's up in Des Plaines someplace. I've never ridden that, so I don't know. I just don't know.
Those are things that we should know.
Terry and our staff has met with the city staff, during this process before the meeting on Monday night. They're very aware that, before they do anything, that we want to be part of it. They know our plans in terms of what we're talking about doing at Hinckley. And I agree with everything you're saying, that we should be part of it and that we should look at this as a joint, what makes sense to do together and not, so everybody's taking care of all the needs. The sidewalk is a big, thing that we've talked about as well. There's some challenges there, so it might help with this whole road diet to get a sidewalk in there, right? Because we've known that's a need for a long time. We've got a challenge with the space between the fields and the street right now, right? But, hopefully we can work something out. So we're excited about it as well. And Terry's reached out to them after we heard from you on Monday as well. So.
Well, then I have to join in. The only thing I would say is I appreciate all the feedback I'm hearing now. This is perfect. If Commissioner Coyne, you're successful with the wonderful mayor, as I also share friendship with, and I appreciate his leadership, in gaining the cooperation with the other elected commissioners and their presidents at some meeting, I would love to get a kind of organized punch list update on a lot of these things that are just tired for me with my IQ to track. And then that way we kind of have a kind of ongoing discussion as to here's what's going on sustainability, here's what's going on tree planting across the city, here's what's going on with lawn care. It's a lot of good stuff you're doing. I think just a little bit of organization when you get there, note taking in essence, would be great.
You want to report back from when
I would love a report back.
And that's
every once
fine.
in a while, maybe quarterly even.
Makes it sound like I have something to do, so that's good.
I think it's a legitimate job now.
Right.
So the point is, I just wanted to stress that I like the fact that the city is trying to work across these different units of government, and there's a lot of good stuff, but I am also want to make sure that all of us are informed, not just people that have attended the city meeting or the staff, because that sidewalk is critical to a lot of people's thoughts, but I only heard it off the cuff like yesterday. So it's just, I think you helping us organize this will be wonderful at a board level.
I'm happy to do that. I think that's what the intent is, and probably the intent would be similar report backs at D64 at the city and at
It'd be wonderful.
and that so that we kind of know what's going on, and I'm certainly not going to be active in the planning of all of these things. It's really just sort of an idea so people know what we're doing, and then I should, at that point, when we start talking about things like the road diet thing, I better have a better I want to have a better understanding of exactly what we're planning to do at Hinckley, so that without committing anybody, but at least
Yeah.
I have an idea, and then I can come back to here and we can just hash it all out. So that's fine.
Well, I would. Yeah, I think that's really important because I guess understand the genesis of the project. So the bike task force was tasked with, so go develop this master plan and develop these bike routes and whatever throughout the city. And so we did that. And actually, Bussy was not in phase one. You've seen the wayfinding signs around town. You've seen some of the road treatments here on Prospect and in town. That was all part of phase one of the project. Phase two was the recommendation of the road diet on Bussy. Now, because this came from the bike task force, and again, we were told, you guys work on bikes. We don't want you working on pedestrian issues. We don't want, this is, okay. So the proposal that came from the bike task force only involves the road diet insofar as it's going to enable to put bike lanes on the Bussy. So this whole thing about pedestrian issues in Hinckley, and it hadn't been considered as part of the bike plan. It should be introduced. In fact, there was a comment made at the meeting Monday night. Well, you know, this money that we're talking about spending, it's only for the road diet. There's no money there for pedestrian crossings, sidewalks, blah, 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 blah. However, it's really valid to keep that discussion on the table because it was also mentioned at the meeting, IDOT is they have signed on to a complete streets policy that says that anytime they're doing a road project, it has to take into account all users, not just motorists, not just it's everybody. And so we definitely have a stake in this. Absolutely. So but I wanted to put it forward that for my participation in the task force, there wasn't any input on it. So just.
That's good information. Right. I kind of knew that, but I appreciate the reminder. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity for the park district to be able to improve safety and provide better access to the park from that side. And I think it's going to be good. But yes, first we have to figure out when we can actually meet, because that seems to be a challenge right now. But we will get that figured out. And then, and I appreciate you telling us about what the new law is regarding the roads, because then I'm going to propose motorcycle only lanes on that whole stretch. So
have at it.
Any further questions for Commissioner Coyne? Seeing none, moving on to communications and correspondence. Any? None noted. Any new business to be brought before the board? All right. I move to adjourn to closed session to discuss land acquisition per 2C5. We will reconvene to the regular board meeting to adjourn the regular board meeting.
Second.
Any discussion or questions on the motion? Commissioner Leach?
What land are we going to discuss about in the closed session?
There's 2 parcels.
Okay.
May you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Tunnel?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Leach?
No.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.